Hello and welcome to another ship review. Today we will talk about Condor. This is Caldari Tech 1 attack frigate. Condor is another good choice if you want to annoy your opponents in something very cheap, disposable, but efficient. As you can see, it's one of the most popular Tech 1 frigates. A while ago, before light missile nerf, Condor was top 1 or maybe top 2 frigate, but since then it slightly fell out of a meta. But nevertheless, it's still very effective, in particular in a current meta after the introduction of Navy destroyers in 2022. And the reason why it's so good against destroyers is that you can kite with a tracking disruptor, and your DPS against destroyers with rage armor is actually quite respectable. So you can see here on the performance map that Condor scores above 60% against Tick-1 destroyers and above 20% against Navy destroyers. And this is against general sample. So if you know what you are doing, you can probably push it to something like 40 to 50% against Navy destroyers, which is amazing value for money for a Tick 1 frigate that costs barely 10 million ISK. There are two issues with Condor compared to other attack Tick 1 frigates. The first issue is that kiting is very predictable. You can make scrum kiting work, but in the current meta, you don't really have a decent engagement profile for a rocket scrum kiting Condor. So in the majority of cases, you just want to go kite, and as you can see, 80% of Condors will use light missiles. And in this case, everyone will just expect you to kite, and when everyone knows what you're going to do, they will either avoid fighting you or they will bring counters. Thankfully, you still get plenty of fights, particularly against larger ships like destroyers and cruisers if you have some friends, because people are generally very complacent against throwaway Tick-1 frigate, but Condor is actually quite capable. And the second problem is damage application against frigates with afterburner. So if you compare Condor versus our attack frigate kiters like Raylatron, Artillery Slasher, or Beam Executioner, you have to switch into Navy missiles, and with Navy missiles, your DPS is just abysmally poor. So compared to all of these ships, Condor is relatively worse, I feel, at fighting against frigates. Of course, if you are hard countering them anyway, when eventually you will kill an afterburning frigate, but it just takes a hilariously long time. And if you're fighting in a hot system, then it's very likely that you will just get pushed away by a third party or by your opponent, fleet mates or friends. Okay, I will show you both kiting feats, which is the main line, and the scrum kiting feat in the next portion of the video. Alright, so the most popular feat is the kiting Condor. The feat is quite straightforward. You have 3 missile launchers, macro order fob disruptor, MSC, and tracking disruptor. The good thing about this feat is that you have a certain number of hit points. So even if you make some piloting mistakes, some small piloting mistakes, and take some damage, you're not gonna die immediately. And another big advantage of this feat is that you have Tracking Disruptor. And Tracking Disruptor allows you to mitigate most of the damage from long range destroyers and all cruisers, which enlarges your engagement profile significantly compared to many kiters without Tracking Disruptor. Now, the problem if you fight against frigates, when you have to switch from rage ammo to faction ammo, And with faction armor, your DPS drops from around 100 to 80, and some of it will still be mitigated with signature. And as you can imagine, with something like 65 to 70 DPS, it will take a very long time to kill a frigate, which is a problem if you are fighting in hot systems. Now, in this feat, you can also tackle cruisers, and many cruisers will be very complacent. They don't really realize how difficult it actually is to kill a Condor, even with a pack of drones. But of course, you need friends to get a kill on a cruiser, because you can't really realistically kill a cruiser in a kiting Condor. You just don't have enough DPS. Okay, if you wanna go with rockets, when it will look something like this, in my experience, you generally want double webs, because double webs allow you to use rage missiles against afterburning frigates, which gives you a significant boost to your DPS. And in addition, it generally gives you advantage in control even against frigates with double webs. And since you are a natural scrum kiter anyways, it usually gives you a good way out. So if you are not beating another frigate on tank to DPS, you can just leave. As a general rule, if you're fighting against frigate that can project damage to the scrum range, you will have to leave, because as you can see, your tank is just not there. So against something like Hookbill, you will just have to leave. You will have better control, but you will have to leave because your tank to DPS is not competitive. But against brawlers, this it may work. If you're fighting against destroyers, you generally need to swap one of the webs for a tracking disruptor, and then just hug your opponent at something like orbit 500 and use tracking disruption on tracking speed instead of optimal range, and hope that you will mitigate. You will have Nosferatu to fuel your rep, so even if you take some small damage, it generally will be repairable. With destroyers, of course, you are hard committed. If fight is not going your way, you just cannot be able, you will not be able to burn away. So yeah, it's up to you. If you wanna engage destroyers, you need to slightly adjust the feet and commit, but if you just want to fight our frigates, when just straightforward scrum kiting with double web works fine. Yeah, I think this is really all I wanted to say about Condor, so try out these feats, in particular kiting feat, and I hope you will get decent results in them. See you in the next videos.